That's big
Needless
though.
to say, we've touched at
Nice.
least 2 people. Which,
That's
if you think
awesome.
about it, that's a lot of
That's
people.
low key a lot. That's one per post.
Yeah.
And if you think about a room full of people that watched your movie and then 2 people come up to you and give you like commentary on it, like that's a lot of people. I mean, the internet's really skewed our perspective.
That's true. It also like goes into exactly who our, I guess, target audience is, because like that the Club Penguin or whatever, the nostalgia post got some people commenting. I feel like that goes kind of speaks for itself as who our target audience is and who we can really reach. It's the people that we know and that we have lived experiences that reflect each other's, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's gonna teach us like who those people are. I hope.
That's true.
Let's start. Why don't you tell me some of your thoughts?
So, big Pixar fan, as most people that know me know. But Inside Out, I actually didn't like the first time I saw it. I think I watched it at school during like one of the, movie days or whatever. But I rewatched it like a month ago when I was having like the worst day of my life. And I cried several times before returning to, stop motion work or whatever. And then I watched it again with my mom and my brother a few days ago. And yeah, I love it. It's great. It's sad, but the good kind of sad. And I think kids and adults can appreciate it in different ways. And I think that's the beauty of it. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from. I didn't like it. Now I like it a lot.
And when you watched it, what, a month ago, how were you feeling about it then?
I knew it would make me cry because I had like. Do we need to give spoiler alerts for the first one?
Yeah, sure. We'll just say we'll just say we'll spoil both.
Okay, yeah. Spoiler alerts. We're spoiling both Inside Out movies. So I had like seen. I feel like I never watched it like entirely. I don't really know because most of the time when you watch it in class, your class is what, like 50 minutes or something. So I remember seeing it in like broken up parts, whatever. I know Bing Bong, that part made me really mad and sad the first time I watched it. But yes, but like in rewatching it, I knew going in that it would make me cry, but I wanted to cry that day. So it was like, okay, what movie am I going to put on? I've seen most of the Pixar movies like recently, except for that one. So I watched that and I did indeed cry. And I love Bing Bong and it was beautiful. But yeah.
Now what were your thoughts on Inside Out 2?
Okay, well, this is my Letterboxd review, but I think Envy is like the cutest little creature thing ever. Every time she was on screen, I was just like, oh my god, this is adorable. I think they did an incredible job casting Io Debris and Maya Hawke. I felt like it captured this time period very well, and
True.
They spoke right to, I feel like, the young people who were watching, perhaps, because it is about, at the end of the day, it's about a girl going through puberty.
So you gave it 4 stars.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I was talking about when I was like pitching the idea of like, okay, what like talking about movies could be, but I know I gave it 3.5, but you have to defend yourself.
That's pretty
like
high.
now,
That's
basically,
pretty high for you.
it is pretty high for me. Like that means it's a good movie, and I did
Well,
think
'cause
it
it
was
was-
a good movie.
I think I assume you rated it that high because the message was incredibly clear. Correct? I don't know.
Okay, well that's low key gonna be one of my complaints is that I actually think that the symbols and metaphors could have been more clear, but
Oh.
it was solid. So that is also like a point of praise,
I think my favorite thing about both of these movies is that it makes you think of yourself as more than one creature. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Right.
well, yeah. It kind of makes you feel that there are always people rooting for you.
Sure.
And I think as a kid, if I were a kid watching that, it would definitely make me think about how you're never like really alone, and I think that's beautiful.
I definitely got that sense when Riley's mom came and woke her up after the new emotions showed up, and Riley sits up and she's like, "Just leave me alone," or like, "Whatever, mom." And her mom's like, "Oh, okay." Like, I think we zoomed inside of her head and they were like, "What's wrong with her?" But it's perfectly laid up. We know why she's mad, because she's, kind of, her like headquarters has been decimated.
Yeah.
So stuff like that I I really liked. Yeah.
In the Time article with Pete Docter, he talked about, they asked him if he and Pixar, I guess, were like aware that a lot of the things in this movie would go over kids' heads, and he was like, of course we did. Like, the first movie went over a lot of kids' heads, even with like anger and sadness. It's like they didn't understand what we were talking about, but they did it anyway. There were even a few things that I feel like I wasn't super like, I guess like didn't have in my normal vocabulary, like you know what I mean? Like they really went for very
Oh,
niche.
I love that it was like, oh, like your sense of identity, your sense of self, that's sent all the way to the back of your mind.
Right.
It's like, whoa, yeah. And like, yeah, she's like, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. And then all these new emotions show up, and part of that is uprooting your sense of self, throwing it to the back of your mind. Now, a new sense of self is being, and this is where like the metaphors and symbols really hit.
Yeah.
Is a new sense is being formed. I suck. I suck. I suck. Then by the end of the movie, it's all kind of tied together, and it's almost left to Riley to like understand, yes, I can be selfish, but I can also be a good person. I can be all these things. It's a more complete sense of self. Beautiful. And we don't talk about that. And not only are we like talking about it basically more now, and I think that it's something to really be like praised, is that, okay, this is actually like the purpose of storytelling is being shown you. Developing new stories for us to deal with the problems that, still plague us.
Yeah.
Not only are we developing a new vocabulary, but we're also developing a new visual vocabulary. Like, we can think of these things. It's dope.
Yeah. The mix of also like 2D and 3D animation in the film is beautiful. Bloofy, is that what the little dog was called?
Whoever. Dude, he was low-key getting on my nerves. Dude, Pouchy kind of creeped me out. He was like, and like, I was like, it reminded me of Bo Burnham's Socko. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
It sounded
about.
like Bo Burnham. Hold on, maybe I should look up, like, well, maybe I'll do that later.
Yeah, no, I thought of that exactly. It sounded, the voice, exactly.
Dude, and then they reach into his mouth and he's like, it was disturbing. I was actually surprised they got away with that. In The Big Dark Secret, I was like, whoa, like, what is this?
And they didn't even touch on that. Like, so again, it's like the film, I feel like, took a lot of risks in sort of like, these things might go over people's heads. These things might, some people might not understand what we're saying, even adults. Because again, if you're not familiar with this, I think what people call it now, like therapy language, therapy talk or whatever, I think the film will give a lot of kids at least access to these words, which could be interesting. Because I know, again, like you said, what is the point of storytelling? What is the point of having things released in theaters for general audiences to see? And it's to get people thinking and talking about these things in the context of themselves, but also their families, the people around them. If we think about like some of Pixar's earlier movies that we watched when we were really young, like Finding Nemo was probably the first time I had seen the concept of someone getting kidnapped and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I know Monsters Inc. was for me the first, and I know we talked about this, but Monsters Inc. for me was the first time I realized like you say goodbye to people. And I know we want to do Bridge to Terabithia in time, but
yeah,
I remember they shredded the door, and I like looked at my mom and I was like, nah, right? Like, this isn't real. I think I told my mom, like, turn like Monsters Inc. off because the music is kicking in and it's like da na 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 na. While Boo, dude, I mean, this is back when Pixar was in their bag, all right? Because Sully is standing there. It's like dramatic irony, right? Sully's standing there and he knows he's saying bye to Boo and she doesn't know. And the audience knows. And it's so heart-wrenching because she's showing him all of her toys, bruh. It kills me. It even kills me now to think about it. Pixar doesn't do it like that anymore.
Well,
They didn't do it with Inside Out 2. I'm sorry. They just didn't.
Yeah, that's true.
Like that scene in Monsters Inc., that's like a 5-star scene, right? And I know it's like comparison is the theft of joy, but it's also like worth like being real. Like like, for instance, okay, the end of Inside Out 2, very beautiful to see. Basically a game of hockey. She's having a great time, right? That was awesome. Now, do I buy that this is the defining chapter of Riley's life where she learns how to become mindful and overcome anxiety and envy and embarrassment? No, not at all. I do not believe that she overcame these emotions in 3 days at hockey camp.
Okay, I totally agree with that. Because I also felt like the movie was so short. Like, when it finished, I looked at my brother and I was like, that's it? I was like, huh? I mean, it's 90 minutes, but I feel like this is one of the movies that could have been 2 hours, maybe over 2 hours, because you're right. It's about anxiety, and she just got it.
Right. Like, I know for me, it took me a while. Still working on it, actually.
Yeah.
I guess, like, is the lesson of the movie, like, go to hockey camp and puberty, you can, like, speed run it? I don't know. That's why I'm saying I don't, I think that the metaphors and symbols could have been more clear, because I don't really think that what they're saying adds up. If I remember the first Inside Out correctly, it's saying you need sadness. Sadness actually helps. Well, that's really clear. I think that movie said that really clearly. And I guess I do think that I remember buying that Riley was depressed at 11, moving to a new city, and that these changes were made when she almost ran away. And then when she came back home, that was like, I bought that her coming back home. Again, maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I just bought that was like a defining chapter where she learns that it's like basically okay to be sad, right? This movie, I didn't buy that at all.
It was also, that was over the course of a few weeks, I think, at least. That could play into it, but also it's like Joy is our character. Like, Joy, I guess.
Yeah,
is
Joy's like actually the protagonist. Yeah, totally.
Right, and so we're following Joy, and I think Joy in the first one, we really see the full circle moment, because there's so much resistance from Joy to like accept sadness. So it's really her story, and so maybe the second movie, maybe the fault was that in the first one we had such a strong, like, there was such a strong contrast between joy and sadness, which they were the ones that were kind of against each other, even though sadness wasn't necessarily like fighting. Sadness was trying to help Joy, so that was an interesting story too. Because
it's the same thing as anxiety, trying to help.
Yeah, but anxiety was like locking them up, throwing them away. You know.
Yeah, that was crazy. I really liked the way that I thought it was beautiful that anxiety on one hand is bouncing from side to side of the control board, but then on the inside of that whirlwind, she's frozen. I was like, that's dope.
Yeah. The character design is beautiful. Embarrassment saved the day.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, the metaphors and symbols aren't clear. Okay, so what does that mean? You mean on the inside of my head that embarrassment is like helping save me from anxiety? Like, what are you talking about? You know? Yeah, whatever. I mean, at a certain point, it's like you're thinking too hard, but it's also like, am I? Because that's the point of the movie.
Yeah. Because because their strongest movies, like, they answer all of those questions.
Something I want to say about Inside Out 2. Was not feeling the music. The best parts was when you heard that da na 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 na.
Right.
Na, 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 na. There's not another memorable melody here. You know, when I revisited Inside Out briefly before this, I don't remember Sadness's melody right now, but she had one. And whatever, I'm not gonna act like scores are like all melodies, but it's like, you know, this one was just pretty basic. And I do feel like in general, even when it's like Spider-Man No Way Home and it's like a more, like, that's a very basic theme. I don't love Michael Giacchino's Spider-Man theme. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, bum. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, that's not really like Spider-Man to me, but it's like memorable enough. It does its job. I thought that the themes for Inside Out, bum 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 bum. I'm like, this really is kind of encapsulating the movie, and I don't think the score for this movie did anything but just, do what a score needs to do. So I wanted to mention
I
that.
agree.
Whatever,
I agree
hater
with
alert,
that.
but
No, because the first one was it's so beautiful. When I rewatched it both times, and like the ice skate when Joy is kind of skating with Riley, with that music playing, it's beautiful.
right.
Yeah.
I do kind of so okay. Sometimes I think a lot of Pixar movies have this issue, but I will point out a Pixar movie that does this right a little bit, which is The Incredibles. Now I feel like The Incredibles finale, okay, it ends with the remote control, right? And I've always thought that the remote control was weird because that's not what the movie's about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The movie's about Bob learning how to work together with his family and not be such like an individualist, right? And then the finale revolves around Syndrome's remote control. Never loved that, okay? But a time that really works is in The Incredibles, is in the Life's Incredible Again montage, and he and Dash are playing catch, and super strong, so he throws the football really far. Dash super fast, runs and gets the football, runs right back. I think that's brilliant. I love that shot in the montage. And it comes back again during the end of The Incredibles when he goes, Dash, go long. And you hear ba-dum, bum, ba-dum. And Dash takes off running after the remote control. And you're like, yo, they cooked. They cooked. It's awesome. There's no moment like that in Inside Out 2. Because where was the video game character? If he came back in the finale, it would have been like Han Solo coming back at the end of Star Wars. You'd be like, yo, this is paying off. There was no payoffs here.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I didn't think, like, okay, I guess it's cool that like they go on their little adventure throughout Inside Out 2, but I felt that it was largely kind of irrelevant to the finale. They didn't learn anything throughout the movie that came back and like helped in the finale. This movie, Riley didn't learn how to deal with anxiety, and it kind of felt contrived.
Right, Joy did. Which,
or like, did she? Or did she just show up at the end and say, I get it? Or like, you have to let her go? Joy already knew that. So like, what was the big adventure for? Do you still think it's a 4-star movie?
it's probably a 3.5. And I think it's because, again, like it ended and I wasn't like, aw. I was like, that's it? You know?
I didn't rewatch Inside Out before this. I listened to a documentary called The Pixar Story today while I was driving around. I just listened to it and just had it on, and it reminded me of some of the stuff that I already knew because I saw The Pixar Story when I was a kid. My mom recorded it on TV for me.
Yeah.
And I've been reading Creativity Inc., which is Ed Catmull's book. So I'm like, 50-some% through that. And it was nice to hear that because it put like Pete Docter's recent statements in like a certain context. I'm not actually sure when The Pixar Story dropped. 2007. So this was like before, I think, Ratatouille. Like Ratatouille wasn't even mentioned in The Pixar Story. It stopped at Cars. But it shows like where the company was at that point, which I think was like arguably at its peak.
For sure. I also went back and read the full, like, I guess Time Magazine interview with Pete Docter, but I also know he did one with
Bloomberg.
what Bloomberg, exactly. And that one was, I think, the more harsh one. I think the Time one came after that.
Okay.
I think it also, that one also put things into perspective because I was going off of like screenshots of the article because I don't have access to Bloomberg, so I was going off of like the few screenshots I had seen on Twitter, and what other people were saying, which it's kind of just reflective of what most of the other franchises that have been bought out by Disney are going through, or companies, I guess.
What do you mean?
Like Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar. It kind of seems like there used to be this public perception of quality and an expectation of quality associated with those brands. And now I feel like in the past couple of years, that's just disappeared. There was a tweet that got 113,000 likes that said, "It's insane how Disney Plus single-handedly destroyed three of the most universally trusted brand names with Marvel, Star Wars, and Pixar in like less than 2 years." I don't know. And I feel like I've been able to have that kind of conversation with people that are not just interested in like storytelling and movies. I feel like everyday people are kind of seeing that as well, which normally it takes longer for other people to recognize. But it's just, I don't know. I think we can agree that public perception of Pixar isn't what it used to be, I guess.
You did see maybe the fall off start with, at the very least, like The Good Dinosaur. Like, I remember seeing The Good Dinosaur and being like, yo, like, this movie's not good.
I agree.
And we've
That
talked
one
about
was
this before.
rough.
And
Yeah.
I cried because I thought that it was really cute at the end. And what, it was like some goodbye scene or whatever. Like,
I don't even remember it, if I'm being honest.
Were you moved at all or no?
No, and I love dinosaurs. I love
Green creatures. Yeah.
and I was really excited to see it, and I think my family like rented it because Disney Plus didn't exist back then, so it was like we rented it to watch at night, and I'm more than sure half of us did not finish the movie, which I don't like doing, but I think I finished watching it, but I don't remember it. But I guess I know some people on Twitter were referring to like the movies that the Bloomberg article kind of refers to as if those were like Pixar's downfall, which were Soul, Luca, Turning Red. Other people on Twitter refer to that as like a mini like Pixar renaissance. You know what I mean? Which I agree with, and I think I was pleasantly surprised in watching all three of those movies, and I think Luca is literally one of my top at least 5 favorite films of all time. I think it's a beautiful story. I love everything about it, and it feels, personal, which I think every good movie should feel that way, but it also feels Pixar. I also watched Luca and Soul with my family, and they liked it a lot too, so I just don't really get why those movies are the ones that are being targeted, when again, it's like marketing wasn't great, etc., etc. But then the title of the article is Pixar's Pete Docter. If Inside Out 2 doesn't succeed, we have to radically rethink our business. And so basically a lot of it is just putting a lot of pressure, on Inside Out and saying that like all the, research and stats or whatever are pointing to this being a huge success. And if it isn't, it means bad things not only for Pixar and Disney, but also for Hollywood this summer in general. But he kind of goes back in this article, because this one is after some of the, like, I don't know, the responses to the Bloomberg article. And so he says, here, I'll just read his exact words. I think that there was a bit of misunderstanding about that, because it's not that those movies were too specific, but what I found is sometimes if you are telling a personal story, you'll be like, oh, that's not the way that story goes, because my story is this. But we're not telling my story. We're telling a story that needs to work for a fictional character that we're creating. So there's sometimes a reluctance to let go or let the movie shape itself the way that it needs to. Nemo is very personal. Obviously, Andrew Stanton is not a fish, and he's not a single dad, but he recognized that his own smothering of his child is an effort to protect them. He was able to springboard off of that to tell stories about octopuses and all sorts of wild, fun stuff. The story shouldn't come fully formed. You're always adding and removing stuff. It's an organic, messy process. But sometimes your own personal experience can drive that, and other times it can get in the way. Which I totally agree with what he's saying. But I don't think that was the case for either of those 3 movies, Turning Red, Luca, Soul. Like, I feel like those were very fully fleshed out ideas that were personal, but I don't think that got in their way. I don't know. I guess I don't know. Also, kind of like, I feel like we've been saying this in I don't know if it was the last newsletter draft or a quote that one of us, I don't remember, but just the idea that like you can't fake the emotions that you're trying to communicate, but everything else you can kind of learn about and find along the way. But the like basically like the heart of everything is the emotions that you share with the piece. And I don't know, I guess I'm kind of thinking about that in the sense of like, what do they mean by, I guess I just don't even know why this is a big thing. Like, why are they talking about it like this? The idea of like personal stories versus not personal stories, and whether or not it's their downfall. I feel like that has nothing to do with the quality of a story.
This has been the Aquarium Podcast, episode 1. Okay, wait, hold on. This has been, well, maybe I should do a whole new tone of voice because I've been too chalant. This has been the Aquarium Podcast. I'm Nathan Shanahan.
I'm Aly Castillo.
See you next week.
Why'd that sound so serious, though? That sounds less...
See you next week. Boing.